Hello, today we are going to go over an abalone diver, a couple of boarders. We're going to go over a shark, a type of species of shark in the Keys that normally is not in the shallows, and this shark was in very shallow water. And then we're going to finish out the show with an attack on brothers. So stick around, it's going to be a great show. Okay, we're going to start out our show over at Waipo, which is in Hawaii, and the date is late December of 1993. Daniel McMoyler, the week before Christmas, he goes out at Waipo and does some surfing, and he disappears. Nobody spots his body. It's sometime a week before Christmas, so you're talking in the teens, the high teens as far as date. It was January 11th when some remains had washed onto shore. They were identified by the U.S. Army identification over in Hawaii as being that of Daniel McMoyler's. There are scratches on the bones and the bite marks. They said that this was an 8-foot tiger shark that either took and attacked Daniel and took him away from his board, or went ahead and scavenged on his body after he drowned. I would go for the first one, and that's how it's going to go down in the books. This is not the first time that a tiger shark has grabbed somebody off of a board. Robin Warren, a very famous one, because that's the one where the DNA was used by University of Hawaii, I believe it is, or a Hawaii company over there that ran the DNA and found out not only that it was a tiger shark that grabbed Robin Warren off his board, it was also 14 feet long. And they never did recover his body. All they went off of was saliva from the bite to the board, and they were able to identify the shark. That should be done more often if it's possible. This is an attack. We're going to put it down as an attack and a predation by an 8-foot tiger shark. Okay, we're going to head down to the Florida Keys on the Overseas Highway to mile marker 20. And this attack takes place on April 13th of 2015. Mark Rackley, he is 48 years old. He is a shark videographer by trade. He has done videography for Shark Week, or for Discovery Channel. I'm not sure which programs, but he's done work for the Discovery Channel. So he's a professional diver working with sharks, taking photos, videos. He's 300 yards from the land, and he runs into, of all things, a blue shark. Blue sharks that are supposed to be out there in hundreds of feet water, deep water, has gone miles in shallow water and ended up 300 yards offshore. Now, Mark Rackley, of course, knows how rare it is to see this blue shark so close to shore. So he decides he wants to get a photo of it, and he starts swimming along with it, and he swims himself in front of it taking a photo. He says he agitated the shark. I would think that it bent itself up a little bit before it did what it did, but the shark went to swim away from him. He kind of went over on top of the shark, and that's when the shark got mad, turned, and he says it was lightning fast, bit him in the bicep and the shoulder at the same time. So he got a bite from it, and the shark held on for a little bit, so he dropped his let go of his camera, and he grabbed the shark, and then the shark let go. Mark had said the thing would happen in the blink of an eye. That's how fast these sharks get you. That's why when I watch these people diving with tiger sharks, and they're taking their hands and they're pushing the noses of the sharks away. And one video I have, there's 2 divers in there, and they're constant. It's like you're juggling. There's so many sharks coming at them, and when the one gets done pushing one head away, they have to reach and get another one and push it away, and from each other too. This was a crazy dive. I hope they got out of the dive right away, because that was not what I would want to be doing. So he was stunned by that. He said that, you know, it was lightning quick, and he says even when he was being bitten, he thought to himself, what a beautiful fish. So Mark Rackley goes in, he gets sewn up. I'm sure he's fine. I haven't heard that he'd been attacked by a shark before. You would think working with the sharks, this probably happens more than once to somebody like this. It would not be surprising. So that's our story of Mark Rackley. We're not even going to put this down as an attack, because it was pretty much provoked. He went and followed the shark and crowded its space. Once you do that, you're aggravating the shark. Brother Island divers that dove with that smaller oceanic white tip that got mad and finally went down and bit one of the divers, same thing. That is provoked. When you're not giving that shark its space to do what it wants, and you're crowding its area, what do you expect it to do? So we're not going to cover this as an attack. I just wanted to go over the story. He was a videographer. It's about an 8 to 9 foot blue shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to the Old Kona Airport State Park. And the date on this attack is October 1st of 1999. Jesse Spencer, he is 16 years old. He is out doing some surfing. He is 80 yards from shore. It's 6:30 in the evening, 80 yards from shore. He's in 30 feet deep water. He's out there and he's laying on his board when suddenly a shark comes up and grabs his left arm. He's able to pull his arm away from the shark, and then he ends up paddling his way in. He gets his arm lacerated very badly with a big gouge underneath his elbow. So the top teeth seem to have gouged up his arm, and one of the teeth seemed to have done very bad damage underneath his elbow. This is from witnesses, so they had witnesses and they estimated the shark length, and it's anywhere from 6 to 10 feet. So it's probably somewhere around 6 to 8 foot shark. Maybe a couple people overestimated, a couple people underestimated it. We'll go with 8 feet on the shark length on this one. Of a tiger shark that grabbed his arm. Tigers, like I said, they don't care what they're biting. It's on the surface, they're just going to grab it. They're not a strategic shark. They're not going to waste their energy getting behind you and making sure that they just get your legs or worry about anything else. Now, a tiger shark's usually just going to casually come up and take a bite and go on its way. It's usually one bite, and he's lucky that he's got his arm because of the sharpness of those teeth. That's the attack on Jesse Spencer. We'll put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate by an 8 foot tiger shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to Poison Creek, and that is at Cape Arid National Park in Esperance, Australia. The date, October 8th, 2013. Greg Pickering, 55 years old. He is out doing some night abalone diving. His boat is about 5 miles from shore, and he is diving about 70 feet from his boat. No telling how deep the water is. It's 8:30 at night, and he sounds like he's at the bottom actually collecting the abalone when a shark comes up and bites him. It's reportedly a white shark that came up and got him. He was bitten in the torso, which also caused minor injuries to his face and his head. So his torso and his shoulder end up with some damage, and then his face and his head end up with maybe scratching from the teeth when it turns. Maybe some scratching from just the teeth that stick out in a funky direction. It's even worse with like makos and ragged-toothed sand tigers, that the teeth stick out kind of forward and you get the cuts, but above that you get these little scratch-looking things. No telling what ended up really happening to his head, but it sounds like a one-bite attack. They said it was a white shark. There was another boat, another abalone boat, had seen what had happened, came over, grabbed Greg onto the boat. They controlled his bleeding. They tied up his boat, and they towed his boat in as they took him in. He gets in, and now this Poison Creek is so secluded that only four-wheel drives can get down to where he's at. So they have a four-wheel drive vehicle, rescue vehicle, get down there, get him, and get him up into surgery. He gets into the hospital, gets repaired. It was not his first time with a run-in with the shark. 9 years earlier, he was bitten in the leg while he was out spearfishing at another site. I'm not thinking that we've covered that one yet, so eventually we'll get around to covering his leg bite when he was out spearfishing. So second time around for him. We've had many that have been bitten now, 2 times at least, and a couple of them have been fatal on the second time. We just covered a spear fisherman, I think it was maybe about a month and a half ago, that was out spearfishing, and he was attacked, and then he was out spearfishing again, both off of South Africa, and then he was disappeared, fatally taken by a shark. So, we're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate by a great white shark. We don't know what size. After the attack, they gave the go-ahead to go out and catch and kill the shark, but 24 hours later, they revoked that, saying that the danger to the area had passed. Okay, now we're going to head over to Bird Rock, which is Tamale Point. That's in California, and the date is September 30th of 1984. Paul Parsons is 33 years old. He is one of a couple divers. It sounds like him and his friend Mike are diving, and there's a gentleman and Paul's wife Peggy are on the support boat, which is a 15-foot inflatable Kodiak. So they're done with their dives for the day. They have gone ahead and got their limit of abalone, and now the two of them are doing an exploratory dive to see if there's a couple other spots nearby that are good to be able to collect abalone the next time they come out. So Paul dives in one area, and the support boat takes Mike about 100 yards away, and he dives there. So Paul dives to the bottom, and he's looking around. He doesn't see any fish. He doesn't see it. Doesn't mention any abalone. But what he does notice is a strange feeling of not a good area for him to be at. So he takes and he goes back to the surface and screams for his support boat, which is still about 100 yards away. It's picking up Mike now, and he's screaming for his support boat to come and get him. But he doesn't want to sit on the surface. He knows it's going to take a little bit for them to get over. So he dives back down again, and now he's ascending. He's ascending, and he says he gets about 7 feet, 2 meters from the surface, and he's hitting the back hard. This charging shark, great white, they said between 3 and 4 meters, 10 to 13 foot shark, slammed him in the back, biting him at least, I would think, twice, because he has wounds to his torso that go out from his buttocks, and then wounds to his shoulder and to his back. So he gets grabbed, and then the shark he says he could turn to his side, and he could see the shark's eye. So, you know, you're in its mouth, and its eye is kind of forward of the mouth where you're probably going to be at, and you might be a little bit way back. But he looked over and saw the eye, and he's trying to hit the shark with the abalone iron. Sounds like he doesn't have any success hitting the shark. The shark shook him like a rag doll for a few seconds, released him, and disappeared. He swam to the surface. He's bleeding from his wounds. He's yelling, "Shark, shark," as he's swimming to this support boat, this inflatable dinghy boat. So he gets to the Kodiak. They get him up on board. Now he gets on board the Kodiak. His wife, Peggy, turns out to be a trauma nurse of all things. So she's working on him to stop the bleeding. Put the stitching, they said, 3/4 of an inch apart. So I always wondered, because I had seen this big gap between stitches, which normally, you know, you see a little gap. Well, they said that's so that any infection can leak out. So the wounds were done with 3/4 of an inch in between the stitches. No telling how many stitches he ended up with. He survives the attack. It doesn't sound like there was flesh removal. There was 2 inches deep where these wounds to his buttocks were the worst ones, and that's where the wound was deepest, 2 inches into his body. So he ends up needing some, I'm sure, some heavy rehabilitation afterwards, and that's our story of Paul Parsons, an attack, not an attempt to predate, 10 to 13 foot great white shark. Okay, we're going to finish out our unprovoked attacks over underneath the Roseville Bridge, and that is at what is now the Ted Bromley Training Center, and that's in Sydney, Australia. The date is January 16th. Of 1960. Ken Murray, he is 13 years old. He and his neighbor, another young boy named Gary, they are out doing some swimming. They have goggles on, and they're doing some skin diving with a diving professional named Theo Brown, who is in town with his parents, I believe it is, and he is teaching the boys how to skin dive to get ready for scuba diving the next day. So they're out in the water. It sounds like it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, for the first hour, Ken and his friend Gary, they're splashing around in the shallows, and it sounds like it's a riverbank. So they're splashing around in the shallows for about an hour, and then Gary exits the water. So Theo gets in the water, and Theo and Ken, they decide they're going to swim out. So they swim out, I guess, to the center of this, which is about 300 yards out. They turn around and they swim their way back. It was a long swim out and back. And once they get back, they're in the shallows. Theo exits the water, and now Ken's out in the water. He's in about 4 feet water, and he's practicing his diving in 4 feet of water. Theo gets out of the water, and Ken's there. It's 3:30 in the afternoon now. Ken is about 10 to 15 feet from shore in 4 feet deep water, and he goes under the one time. Theo looks over and sees him pop up out of the water, and his mask is, instead of on his covering his eyes, it's at his chin. He's treading water, and he's got a weird look on his face, and so Theo says, is everything okay? And Ken doesn't respond. He just gasps, and at that point Theo can see the water turn red around Ken. Theo jumps in the water, swims over there, grabs onto Ken, and brings him in. Ken's right leg ended up being severed below the knee. probably from a bull shark is what they're thinking, but nobody ended up seeing the shark. Ken ends up going into the hospital. 9 days later, Ken ends up passing away from his wounds. This is very traumatic to Theo. Theo ends up devoting his life afterwards trying to figure out why sharks bite. This right here. I think he's got another book out that has to do with conservation, but this is his book, Sharks of Silent Savages, and he goes into depth on, you know, what had happened, what ran through his mind before, and what runs through his mind after. He imagines, I guess, the shark. He wonders why the shark didn't attack them when they were in the deeper water, and he wonders about, and he's got some good points, you know. When he exited the water, there was more splashing going on as he was practicing his diving and making more noise than they did when they swam out. So this is a really good book, this Theo Brown book. Very, very sad ordeal he had to deal with. The 13-year-old boy passing away when he was, you know, helping him learn how to dive for his scuba diving the next day. It's just a tragedy. And he goes ahead and he goes ahead, and the book is for Kenneth and a Dr. Lewis Millard, which I believe might be Kenneth's father. But that's the book from Theo Brown. Very sad attack, an attack, not an attempt to predate. Thinking that it's a bull shark, not going to put it down as a bull shark. I'm not sure how far from the ocean this would be to where it would be exclusively a bull. Sounds like that's the case, but if somebody out there knows that this is definitely bull shark area, then we'll put it down as a bull. It's got to be pretty large to take his leg. I would think 6 feet or over. So we're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate, and we're not going to put the type of shark right now. I'm going to put 6 feet plus on there, though, so that we know that it's 6 feet or more. Okay, we're going to finish off our show with You Don't Hear That Every Day, although I've heard something very close to this to where I'm not even sure that this isn't the same story. I thought that the other name was Michael and the last name is different, but this is over in Grenada, at Conference Beach in Grenada, which is West Indies. January 13th, was it January 13th? June 13th of 1970, there was Lincoln John and his brother Alpheus. And Lincoln is 16 years old. I don't know how old Alpheus is. And they're out in the water, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, about 50 yards from shore, in 4 to 5 feet deep water, and both brothers disappear. They just disappear. Nobody notices. There's other people on the beach, and it sounds like there's other people in the water. Nobody notices this pair of brothers disappear. Alpheus's body is never recovered. They never find him, but they do find Lincoln's body the next day. As they find the body, it's being eaten by sharks. So sharks are feeding on his body as they find it. He was in red and white swim trunks when he disappeared. So they find his body. He is being eaten by sharks. They're not sure that, you know, whether they disappeared through, you know, sharks or through something else. I would say two brothers disappearing like that, sharks. And I would also say that two brothers disappearing like that, it's probably a school of sharks. It sounds like a school of sharks got a hold of these two kids. And that's a bad situation. Nobody noticing is a crazy thing, but, you know, the watercolor doesn't help in situations like that. It's kind of like, you know, in the Keys, when you're in that bluey water, you can see stuff that's down in the water. But once you get in that darker water or that has the gray look to it, like sometimes over off the East Coast when I was in Boston, and there was a hurricane coming in, the water just looked sharky to me, and I was like, no. But, you know, you end up with this attack. Probably a school of sharks that grabbed onto these kids. I would think they're large sharks, but they didn't say what size sharks they were, or I don't even think they said what kind. Yeah, species is not identified, so there's no way to tell what size the sharks are. Probably some big ones involved in there. We're going to put this down as an attack, 2 attempts to predate, 2 fatalities by, we'll just put multiple sharks. That's pretty much, I think that's the only thing that could have gotten 2 boys at the same time without anybody else on the beach noticing, would be an actual school of sharks. So, you know, if you guys think differently, then let me know in the comments what kind of shark I should put this thing under. That's our story of You Don't Hear That Every Day. That's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back in a few more days with another full episode, but we're going to get into a story that had been questioned a few times. People have brought it up. I'm going to do a short not a short, but a shorter video, individual attack video. Maybe a couple in between, and I'm going to get a short out there. So we'll have some other things, but the next full attack video is in 3 days. Hope to see you then. But remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of the sharks than they are of you.